Hello and welcome to Stock Footage Theater, a show where I try to recreate your favorite movies using only stock footage. Today we're watching Die Hard. Die Hard is a 1988 film directed by John McTiernan, a titan of the 1980s action film genre. It stars Bruce Willis as John McClane and the late great Alan Rickman as Hans Gruber. The movie was wildly successful, not only for spawning a few sequels, but also for inspiring a few imitators. Movies such as Die Hard on a Plane, Die Hard on a Train, Die Hard on a Bus, and Die Hard in Space. But we're not here to talk about those movies, we're here to watch Die Hard, retold using glorious stock footage. It's Christmas Eve in Los Angeles, and New York City cop John McClane flies in to reunite with his estranged wife Holly and their two kids. After talking to a fellow passenger about toe fisting, McClane grabs his bags and heads out. He's greeted by Argyle, a limo driver that's taking him to Nakatomi Plaza, where Holly works. She's a hotshot business executive for the Nakatomi Corporation, and she don't need no man tying her down. McClane arrives at Nakatomi Plaza and heads up to the 30th floor, where the company is throwing a Christmas Eve party. McClane doesn't care much for the carefree, liberal, California attitude, so he's pretty uncomfortable here. And he doesn't feel any better when he's introduced to Ellis, an associate of Holly's who wastes no time letting McClane know how well Holly is fitting in at her new job. He even shows off the fancy new watch they gave her. Face it, John boy, she's one of them now. Speaking of Holly, here she is. She and John awkwardly embrace and share a few moments alone together, but the romance doesn't last long because they soon start arguing. McClane thinks she should move back to New York, but Holly isn't about to abandon her new career. Their fight is interrupted when Holly is asked to make a speech for her employees. Meanwhile, a group of armed terrorists led by Hans Gruber begin to infiltrate the building. They take out the security guards in the lobby, lock all entrances and exits, and cut off all telephone lines. Then they make their way up to the 30th floor and take everybody hostage. But McClane hears the attack from Holly's office and he manages to slip away and hide in the elevator shaft. Gruber looks for Mr. Takagi, the head honcho at Nakatomi. Once he finds Takagi, he takes him to his office and asks him for the security code to the vault. Oh, did I say they were terrorists? Because I meant thieves, because they plan to rob the vault of $640 million in bearer bonds. Mr. Takagi insists he doesn't know the security code, so running out of patience, Gruber decides to do it the hard way and he shoots Takagi in the head, with McClane witnessing the whole thing. His crew then begins drilling into the vault, which involves breaking and disabling a series of locks. McClane, now fully aware of the situation, pulls the fire alarm to alert the authorities. Hans sends a few of his goons to see who pulled the alarm, and when they find him, McClane is able to kill them. He takes their guns, some C4, and some detonators. He also takes a radio which he uses to contact the authorities again. This is where Twinkie connoisseur Sergeant Powell comes in. He answers the call and heads to the building to investigate, but he doesn't see anything suspicious. Just a German criminal with a really convincing American accent posing as a guard. So he starts to leave, but before he can drive away, a frustrated McClane breaks a window and throws the dead body of a goon he just killed out of it. The body falls and lands on top of Powell's vehicle. Finally alerted, Powell calls for backup. With the LAPD on the scene, they plan to take back the building with a SWAT tank, but Hans and his crew eliminate the threat with a rocket launcher. McClane retaliates by dropping some C4 down an elevator shaft, successfully eliminating Hans's goons on the ground floor. Ellis decides he needs to intervene and talk to Gruber to try to negotiate with him. Ellis tells Gruber that he knows McClane and he can get him to give back the detonators. Hans, Bubby, how can you not trust this guy? So Ellis gets on the radio and communicates with McClane, telling him that it's time to give it up. Hand over the detonators and let the LAPD deal with the situation, capiche? McClane tries to warn Ellis, but he refuses to give up the detonators.
No!
So Gruber shoots and kills Ellis. Later, while Gruber is checking on some explosives, McClane finds him. Gruber acts scared and passes himself off as an escaped hostage, seemingly convincing McClane. McClane then gives Gruber a gun for protection, but when McClane turns his back, Gruber reveals his true self and points his gun at McClane. But don't worry, McClane is smarter than that because there's no bullets in that gun. Some of Gruber's henchmen arrive quickly after that and open fire on McClane. Realizing MacLeod is running around barefoot, Gruber instructs his men to shoot the windows around him, forcing him to run through the glass, cutting up his feet real good. Not only that, MacLeod was forced to leave the detonators behind, with Gruber taking them back. With his feet gushing blood, MacLeod isn't able to get around very easily, but he isn't giving up. He gets a little pep talk from Sergeant Powell. They talk about Powell's past, how he's screwed up before, and why he can't seem to pull a gun on anyone after accidentally shooting a kid years ago. Outside of the building, the FBI arrive and take over the situation. They decide to cut off the building's power, which Gruber was counting on as it disables the vault's final lock. Gruber demands the FBI send a helicopter to transport him and his men off the rooftop, and the FBI complies. They plan to send a helicopter, alright, a helicopter packed with machine guns. But in another twist, Hans actually plans to set off the explosives on the roof, intending to fake the deaths of himself and his crew. And in yet another twist, he sends the hostages to the roof to be killed as well. Oh, you know what? I forgot about the news reporter side plot. There's this guy Thornburg, and he's a news reporter. With everything going on at the tower, he decides to seek out the MacLeod residents to interview their children on national television. Gruber sees this on TV and figures out that Holly is MacLeod's wife, so he takes Holly with him to use against MacLeod. Meanwhile, MacLeod figures out that Gruber plans to blow up the roof, so he heads up there where he finds the hostages.
Run for your life! I'll cover you!
MacLeod sends them back downstairs by shooting a machine gun wildly into the air, just as the FBI arrive with their helicopter. The FBI agents mistake MacLeod for a terrorist and begin firing at him, and not long after, the explosives go off on the roof. This is where MacLeod achieves Mega Ultra Action Hero status. He ties a fire hose around his waist, jumps off the exploding roof, swings down, and shoots his gun at the window so he can re-enter the building. John MacLeod, ladies and gentlemen. MacLeod then finds Gruber with Holly at his side. Gruber instructs MacLeod to surrender his machine gun, which he does to save Holly. But he's able to distract Gruber long enough to grab a concealed handgun taped to his back. MacLeod then shoots Gruber, who falls back and crashes through a window. But Gruber grabs onto Holly and hangs off the side of the building by the wristwatch she was given. MacLeod then comes to save her. Gruber attempts to shoot them with his pistol, but MacLeod loosens her wristwatch in time to let Gruber go, falling 30 stories to his death. A pretty bad way to go, if you ask me. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if this motivated a family member to come back and avenge him in a future sequel. Back on the ground, John and Holly exit the building. But surprise, Gruber's last henchman, who seemingly comes out of nowhere, comes to attack. Powell steps in, draws his gun, and shoots him dead, saving MacLeod, which wraps up that story arc in a nice little Christmas bow. The movie ends with Argyle driving the MacLeods back to their house where they can live happily ever after, or until they continue to have marital troubles. The end. So that's Die Hard. In my opinion, it's one of the best action films ever made, and I only hope that I could just capture a fraction of its greatness with stock footage. If you enjoy the stock footage version, be sure to let me know in the comments. And if there are any other movies you want to see me cover, feel free to let me know. So with that being said, thanks for watching, my name's Josh, and this has been Stock Footage Theater.